What's up, everyone? Good morning. We got a new edition, a new episode to Real Cannabis Talk. And I got a real special guest today. We got OGFAST on the line here. And honestly, this guy has impressed me so much just by his character, by his attitude, by his knowledge, by his grow techniques. I mean, just he's literally been growing for 32 years since he was 18 years old. I mean, he has a wealth of knowledge, and the fact that he just came on with us today, just to kind of give us a little insight into his life and into how he does things, is really special to me. I'm sure once you guys hear what he has to say, it's going to be pretty damn special to you too. OG Fast, good morning.
Morning. I hope everybody's doing great this morning.
Oh yeah, man. I'm doing amazing. I know our followers are doing awesome. You know, it's been a pleasure, bro. Honestly, talking to you about just different stuff. I've learned a lot already, and I'm just grateful that you came on with me today, and we wanted to just kind of go over some things. I know this talk is really going to be about the bottom line, how to grow good weed. That's the main subject. What kind of experience you have? What have you grown? Different strains, but really in the end, I mean, we'll talk about nutrients and just mixing things and why throwing it all in there at the same time isn't a good idea, and what your thoughts are around that, and just different things that you want to talk about. But let me give you a minute here just to introduce yourself, if you don't mind. Just tell us a little bit about you and where you come from.
Well, I'm like you said, I'm OG Fast. I'm on the East Coast. Cannabis has been a huge part of my life because it's my medicine. Actually, why I started growing was my father went through cancer 6 different times. He had Hodgkin's non-lymphoma, and my dad was one that never smoked or anything like that. And that was my main goal when I was 18 was, you know what, I'm gonna grow cannabis and I'm gonna help people. I'm gonna make medicine that is really, really gonna help people.
Wow, bro.
So for the last 32 years, I've dedicated myself to growing the best weed that I can possibly grow. Well, I shouldn't say weed, cannabis. It's been a learning experience for 32 years.
Damn straight.
Back then, when I was 18, clear up until my late 20s, we didn't have Instagram or anything like that. We had forums. You had Roll It Up, IC Mag, which IC Mag is still here to this day. And I got on there and I asked questions and I listened. And I had a lot of the older old school breeders, and some of them are not alive anymore with us these days, that just taught me, and
wow.
A lot of them, they would tell me, I would try to say something when they were trying to explain to me. And it was, the old motto that the older guys, even my father, used to say, the best thing to do is shut up and listen. Soak it up. Yep. Take everything in, and I'm very happy to be on doing this podcast and stuff. And my whole goal was just to give back to the community and give people correct information on growing and simple things that you can do in your grow to make it better.
Right on, brother.
I mean, that's pretty much for me, that's my whole outlook for it and everything, and it's mainly medicine.
Yeah, man. Tell us, like, I mean, I know that listen, I've already went through so much with you. I've asked you like every damn question I could ask you. Like, so how do you grow? Are you growing HPS, LEDs? Are you what nutrients are you growing? Are you doing hydroponic soil, or you know, what's your methods? What have you found, honestly, that is, because first of all, I want you to describe the kind of weed that you make and how good it is, how it tastes, and just the different, you know, levels of cannabis that you've seen, because I don't think people yet know how good your cannabis is, and I want them to know that, because once they know that, then it's a place to get to, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've grown in every type of medium you can imagine, but I always end up going back to rock wool, and doing a flood and drain setup, which what you do is you have a reservoir, um, you know, with your pumps and stuff, and then you have a flood table. And then what I use is, right now I use red rock, rock wool blocks, and what they are is they're a 6x6 by 4 inches tall.
Mm.
So pretty much my whole grow is nothing but rock wool blocks.
Mm.
Thing with rock wool blocks is they can be really forgiving, because like with the soil and stuff, if you're feeding nutrients and stuff and you're trying to dial in, well, you get it a little hot. Well, with soils and stuff like that, it's hard to bounce back from it, because with peat moss and stuff like that being in soils and stuff like that, peat moss will actually hold nutrients and not release it right away. So with the rock wool, if you run into a mistake, you're like, oh man, I screwed up on this. You can go back and you can flush the whole table with fresh water when you catch your mistake, and then you can correct it. And then you don't take a chance of losing a plant or losing the whole run.
Have you ever, you know, I always heard that when you're doing hydroponics, you could screw up everything, just screwing up your water, you know, all your plants could die instantly. And I was always a little bit afraid of hydroponics because of that. And you're kind of giving me a little bit of a different view on it, where,
Yeah, it's not, hydroponics is not that hard, honestly. As long as you stay on top of your pH, and you're, you know, a lot of people use EC or ppm. You know, a lot of the meters are both. pH is your biggest thing. And then, you know, your EC or your ppm, and also your temperature of your water. Because what I've found through the years with different nutrients, you can have a pH swing. Well, what I got into trying was trying to keep the water cooler, and keeping the water cooler and keeping it the same temperature within 5 degrees. I've had no pH fluctuations.
So really,
the pH, like if the pH changed, it goes from 5.8 to 6.0.
got it.
Which is fine, because you want to stay within 5.5 and 6.0 on the pH anyways.
Got it.
Because anything above 6.0 and anything below 5.5, you start locking out nutrients.
Got it. Okay, so really, it sounds like you're telling me that just keeping your reservoir at a certain temperature is going to be critical.
Yeah, I mean, if you keep your reservoir in the 60s, you know, anywhere from 65 to 70 degrees, you know, you don't get the fluctuation. Like, I know a lot of people, they have to check theirs every day, which, rule of thumb, you should check your pH every day, just to stay on top of it. You know, a lot of people, newer growers and stuff like that, they just think you can put something in, feed it one day, and then not feed it 2 or 3 days, which is true if you're doing a no-till or you're doing a soil mix that actually has nutrients in the soils, you know, just like you would with the no-till when you build your soil. It's true. Hydroponics, I feed every day. And I feed once a day.
Once a day?
Once a day. what I do is, and I don't have anything on timers. What I do is I walk over, I plug my pump in, and I let the table flood for 10 minutes. And then unplug it and walk away.
And
Right now, light wise, I have a HPS in the tent, and then I have an LED in the tent that I'm actually testing for a company out of Poland called Planalux.
okay.
So they're a new company, and it is a bar light. On the board itself, it's 2 rows of LEDs with far reds. It is a 640 watt light, and I run my lights off of 220.
Got it.
Just to cut down amperage, because amperage is the main thing that kills you on an electric bill.
Yeah.
It's not the actual wattage, it's the actual amperage.
Good to know. Okay, cool. So speaking about now you're going into LEDs because there's so many subjects to go into, LEDs versus HPS. What have you had the best experience with so far? Or have you had much experience with the LEDs versus the HPS?
No, I had this is the first LED I've ever had. I've run HPS for 32 years. Never had an issue with HPS. HPS is a superior light because it's the closest replication of the sun on that spectrum. And from what I've seen, and then other people I've talked to and everything, yeah, LED does produce, from what everybody's told me, is that it does produce a tighter nug.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not as frosty.
Yeah, that's what
you do get the true colors and this and that, which is really cool. The stuff is just beautiful. I've seen some guys that run LEDs and talk to them, and just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful cannabis. But as in flavor and taste and stuff, I don't know, because I've never tried any from anybody or anything like that. Like with me with HPS, what my cannabis smells like is exactly what it tastes like, the way it should be. There's nothing in it, period, at all. Very, very clean, burns, and then you got everybody with the white ash, and all this and that. But it's simplicity to me is the best. Less is more.
Yeah.
Is the way I like to tell people. Nutrient wise, I run a product called Crop Salt, and the excuse me.
No worries.
The Crop Salt is it's a 2-part for veg, and then a 2-part for flour. And it is a salt base, so it is in a powder form. And mixing nutrients, the one thing I do, and that I've learned through the years, like I'll mix my part A first until it's completely, totally dissolved. And then I wait, and then I'll mix up my part B. Wait for that to be totally dissolved and everything. Then I put both of them together in one bucket, fill a little bit more water in it, and put it in the reservoir. I do the exact same technique for the flour also.
So you're not doing the A and then throwing the B on top of it. Technically, you're doing A, dissolving it, then going into B, dissolving it, and then mixing the two.
Right. Because what happens is if you try to mix the two together and you got a little bit of part A that didn't mix totally, and then you add the part B in with it also and go to mix it, it'll actually almost turn into like a, how do I put this? Like a drywall paste. it'll clump up and turn into a paste. But what happens is the two end up bonding together.
Interesting.
So that pretty much, you know, locks everything out, and then it doesn't work correctly. So, you know, and it's the same way too with other nutrients. You should always mix everything up separately, so you don't end up with something that actually binds together like a binding agent, and you don't run into an issue to where the actual plant is not getting those two nutrients that you have mixed together.
So I got a question for you here, because you're using a simple A and B for veg, a simple A and B for flower, and you're not throwing in a bunch of CalMag and
CalMag. Let's get on that real quick. CalMag is the biggest joke in this industry. I'm sorry. You know, it's, oh man, where did I start with this one? You know, it's calcium nitrate and magnesium. Well, in your nutrients, as what I run, the nitrogen and stuff is there and everything. Well, a lot of the times when people have a deficiency, they think that CalMag's the main thing that's going to correct everything. Well, in all actuality, you can go to your local grocery store, convenience store, and buy a bag of just regular, non-scented Epsom salt, which is magnesium phosphate. And that's 90% of the time when somebody has an issue and everybody screams CalMag, it's just a magnesium deficiency.
So CalMag is two things, right? Calcium and magnesium. So it's not a calcium deficiency as well?
No. I mean, 90% of the nutrient companies out there that you've got calcium in your nutrients.
Got it.
You know, and 90% of the time, I'll say 98% of the time that I've helped somebody, it's been a magnesium deficiency.
Interesting.
You know, and it depends too if you run tap or if you run RO water, you know, and stuff like that. Like I run tap water and we have calcium already in the water.
Right.
So there's no need in actually adding more calcium.
That makes sense.
And then you don't need it, because then if you start adding more calcium and everything, then you get a buildup. And the calcium can build up around roots.
Interesting.
You know, build up on the pot, you know, build up in the reservoir, you know, just all different things.
Oh, damn. Got it. Interesting. So that's interesting. So CalMag, so right now you're using crop salt. You're using an A and B. You're dissolving the A, then you're dissolving the B, and then you mix those two. Is there anything else you're adding to your solution? Are you adding any bud booster, or this is veg? So you're not adding anything.
Nothing.
So you're keeping it simple, basically.
Yeah. And if you go to my page on IG, it's OGFAST_420. You can look at my pictures, and everything on there is been run. Let me think. Maybe the first 7 or 8 pictures might be when I ran Jack's 321, but all the pictures after that have been crop salt.
Now I'm curious. What have you ran in your history? I mean, you have 32 years worth of running stuff. Aside from crop
General Hydroponics, Botanicare, Supernatural, Jack's, and crop salt.
Got it. So you've had and what are you finding out of your findings? Which one's the best so far? I'm assuming that the crop salt is, but I just wanted to hear from you.
Yeah, the crop salt is, you know, when cannabis became legal and really hit the market hard, you know, everybody knows Monsanto's, they bought up everybody. And a lot of them formulas and stuff that they had created and stuff, Monsanto's has went back through and they've changed. So all the old General Hydroponics and Botanicare and stuff, you know, have changed. It's not the same stuff like it was back in the day.
Got it. Interesting.
You know, Supernatural's still the same. You know, it hasn't changed because it hasn't been bought. You know, and that's the with crop salt. It's its own company. Supernatural's its own company.
Did you ever start out growing with a bunch of stuff like silica? What about silica? And then first you got to add. This is like what I've been taught. First you got to add silica. Let that dissolve for 10 minutes, and then you add some CalMag behind that, and then you start your formula. Is it's prescribed as your formula? So I'm running heavy 16, so I'll run my roots, and then I'll run, you know, all kinds of different solutions, and then finally getting to my A and B, and then I'll throw in some microbes, and then all this other stuff. I mean, by the time, I got a full-on cocktail by the time I'm ready, and you're just doing A and B.
Yeah, and I do also add into the reservoir live microbials. I can't even say the damn word.
Going now. Microbials.
It's actually live bacteria and stuff.
Right.
And what that does is it keeps the reservoir clean, keeps all my plumbing clean, and it also, the plants love it because it goes in and it cleans all the biofilm, all the bacteria and everything that actually sits in the tray and sits at the base of the roots and everything. Like you'll see a lot of guys, they'll post pictures, they pull the pot out and the roots are real dingy and stuff on the bottom. Well, what that's from is from biofilms that actually attach and they coat the actual roots.
Interesting.
So I use a product called More, and I seen a huge difference with it, the actual vigor in the plant and growth with using the product, keeping everything nice and clean.
So you're not even adding teas and different things to, you know, to enhance the terpene profiles in this, and you're still getting fantastic, incredible smoke.
Yeah. And like I said before, less is more. You give the plant exactly what it needs, and you make sure your environment's correct. And it's not hard to do. A lot of people think it's really hard, and it's not. 95% of growing is you're dry and you're pure, to be all honest with you.
Interesting.
You know, that's the biggest thing for the finish, you know, for the actual end product.
Talk about that for a second, because you just said 90% of the grow is the dry and cure. I've got to talk about this. Like, what's your theory on that?
Well, if you go to some of these bigger facilities and you go to a club or you go to a dispensary and it's like, okay, let me see what they got here. And they're like, oh, well, we've got strawberry cough, we got this and we got that. And this is my personal experience. And I'm like, okay, cool, you got strawberry cough. Well, I know Kyle Cushman. Kyle's the one who created strawberry cough.
Right.
I know exactly what strawberry cough is. I go to the dispensary. I get an eighth of it. I'm like, all right, cool. I get home. I'm excited. You know, I'm like, oh, man, I ain't had strawberry cough in it forever. I break it down. I roll it up. I light it, and I hit it, and it's just straight green. Just, no real flavor or nothing there. Bud looked beautiful. You know, had a little bit of smell. Didn't have a really, really pungent terpene profile. But what's going on is they're growing the stuff, then they're hanging it, and they're trying to quick dry it so they can jar it up and put it on the shelf and sell it. Well, with actually hanging and drying, the way I do it is I wet trim. So what I'll do is I'll cut the plant down and I cut the branches off. I don't hang the whole plant. I cut a branch off. I trim all the big fan leaves. I'll leave some of the smaller leaves that are, really, really covered in THC. I'll leave them. And then what I do is I put it on a coat hanger. I'll fill a coat hanger up, walk over. I've got another tent, and I hang it in the tent. What I do is I hang for the dry period for 7 to 14 days, just on the hang to dry. And then I keep the tent between 64 and 68 degrees. And then I keep the humidity around 40 to 48% humidity.
Interesting.
So what that does is it slow dries it. So it gives it the correct amount of time to actually lock in the terpene profile. And then after that 7 to 14 day period, and it depends on the weather and stuff like that. A lot of people don't understand that with the barometric pressure, the dew points and stuff like that. It'll cure, it'll dry different ways. So I've always had luck with a slow dry, and just the terpene profile is so much better on taste and smell and everything with a slow cure.
Now, when you say you're drying and you're hanging for 7 to 14 days, are you also then going through a cure process, or is that the cure process?
Yeah. After the 14 days, the 7 to 14 days, and what I'll do is I'll reach in and I'll grab a stem, and if it breaks, like it should, then everything comes out, and then it goes into mason jars. And then for 2 weeks, I burp the jars once a day. And pretty much all that is unscrew the jar, take the lid off of it, let it sit for 10 minutes. And after you let it sit for 10 minutes, I put the lid back on the jar, and then come back the next day, and before I'll take the lid off the jar, I'll take the jar and I'll kind of shake it a little bit and kind of move the buds around.
Yeah.
So everything kind of moves around and kind of separates away from everything. And then take the lid off the next day. Let it sit 10 or 15 minutes. Put it back on. And it'll get to the point to where you'll smell it, and the cure and the terpene profile and everything just gets even louder.
So you're saying that it's not going to get less, it's going to get louder.
Yeah.
Interesting. And now, what happens when people? Because I kind of know this answer, but I want you to tell us as a community. What happens when people are smelling that green weird smell, that hay bag smell? What's happening in that phase? Because
in that phase, what's happening is there's still moisture in the bud itself. And if you quick dry it and you dry it too fast, what it does is it takes that terpene profile and it almost knocks it out. You can still smell it as you squeeze it, but like the chloroform and everything that's released when you hang it, it doesn't get rid of all of it. And that's where you end up with your hay and your green.
Okay, so So that's
The,
basically when people are quick drying and they're not doing it correctly, they're going to end up with still a green, weird taste
yes.
or that hay smell.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, because my first time, I remember my first time drying a lot of weed, and I swear to God, I thought I was making the biggest mistakes ever. And then I ended up having just way too much cannabis. First time drawing. I mean, this was like my first time, and I thought I made the hugest mistakes because I was like, why is my shit smelling like this? Oh my god! And I didn't know that part of the process is that it's going to smell like that for a little while until but you need to dry it correctly for a longer period of time, and then eventually that if you're doing it right, that smell will disappear, and you'll end up.
Yeah, exactly. You're always going to have a green smell or a hay smell when you first put it in wherever you're drying at, because that's part of the process.
Mm,
It is a plant, and it is being flowered. So if you smell anything outdoors, roses, anything like that, any type of flower, they always have a green smell.
right. Mm,
So as you slowly dry it, that green smell within, I don't know, the first 7 days, 5 days, let's say 5 to 7 days, you'll notice it as you checking on it, that smell goes away. And then you actually start to smell the terpenes start to really, really get vibrant to where you can smell it. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay, cool.
yeah.
You know,
Mm,
grab a hold of the bud, kind of squeeze it, and you kind of you, you can kind of tell exactly like, okay, this is what this is. This is going to be great. This smells amazing. The whole 9 yards. So it's not hard. It's just not rushing it. And a lot of newer growers, they'll cut down their first crop and they hang it and they're like, okay, well, this feels okay. It's kind of crunchy. All right, cool. I'm good. I'm taking it down. I'm gonna smoke it now. And you can't do that. You've got to let it actually dry correctly.
got it. Because
You
then
know.
you're not going to get the chronic if you end up doing it too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's a lot of the big name grows out there and stuff. What they'll end up doing is they'll try to, fast dry and cure and push it out. And if there's any moisture left whatsoever, and they go packaging this stuff up and everything, well, if you leave out moisture in, you let it sit, it creates mold. And there's been some big name, I'm not going to say any names, but there's been some big name grows. I mean, big name grows that's, everybody knows, that's been putting out moldy product.
Got it. Got
And that's not healthy to be smoking.
No, God, no. That'll cause all kinds of stuff in your lungs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What a trip. So as we went from A and B. You're using crop salt. How long are you in the veg cycle normally in an HPS system? I mean, in a hydro system rather.
It depends. It depends on how you want to structure the plants. In
Mm.
all honesty, I like to top twice, and get a really nice structure of a plant. Um, Usually a month and a half in veg.
So you could be a month and a half in veg from. Oh, you're talking about from seedling to, or from baby.
Well, if it's seedling, if it's seedling, it's like two and a half with the seedling, and it depends on genetics also. How vigorous the plant is and stuff like that. And with everything I've grown through the years, like I know what OGs do. I know how they like to be fed. I've run some cookie stuff. Some of that stuff can be finicky. Some of the old school landrace stuff likes to be fed really, really heavy. It can be very, very vigorous. They're just, when you're growing, you've got to do research on whatever strains you're growing. Like, I like to know the actual lineage. I like to know what male was used and what female was used, so I can look at both of them, look at what regions they're from, and look at climates. And a lot of people don't do that. And then you could kind of tell what kind of climate the plant's from. And then what you try to do is you try to make your environment as close as you can to that environment that they're used to.
Interesting.
To get the best results.
Now,
for the plant.
What kind of, well, you said feeding wise, what are you at on the average for a good, regular plant that that you're finding is a medium feeder to heavy feeder? What ppms are you at normally in your veg?
1200.
1200. And for those new people who are growing, that are new at growing, ppms is parts per million, and that's a way of gauging how much nutrient is in the actual reservoir.
Yes. Yep.
So you're about 1200 then.
What was that?
You said you're at 1200 then.
Yeah, 1200 for veg, and then flower is 1400 to 1800.
Okay. And so how long normally, now I know you mentioned some really cool products when going into flower that are the, I guess, second part of crop salt, right? So you have your veg.
Yeah. What I do is when I put plants into flower, before I even flip to 12-12, I put the plants in. I run the veg schedule, which I run 18-6 on the lights. I'll do that for 2 weeks to let the plants acclimate in the flower tent. Well, they're still being fed veg newts, the part A and B of crop salt. And then the day I'll flip to 12-12, the day I flip to 12-12, I run the veg nutrients for 21 days in flower. So the first 21 days of flower is veg nutrients. So that's, and what that does is the first 21 days is when the plant will stretch in flower, does its last stretch. And then after that 21 days, the 22nd day, the reservoir is changed, and then it goes to flower nutrients.
Interesting. And tell us why you're doing that, because I think I know why, but I want everybody to know why.
What you do is, by doing that, you get the stretch period out of the plant. Mm-hmm. And the first 21 days, it's still growing. So when you go to switch it, and that's when you notice your bud set and what the plant's actually going to do, actual flower wise, with your bud sites. Then you can really, really tell how the plant's going to put on, what your node spacing's like and everything like that. And then that gives you an idea too, if you've never run something, that'll tell you how much of a stretch you're going to have. And I've had some plants that I didn't think was going to stretch and super stretch and get up past the lights. Well, then I've got to start super cropping, bending everything over to get it away from the light. So when you're doing it and you're running different stuff and not running the same thing all the time, you can get an idea of what your stretch is going to be. So when you go to structure your plant and veg, and you're trying to get that even canopy, so you got this just beautiful canopy when it flowers, you might get one that stretches above the rest of it. So the first 21 days it's critical, but it's not critical, because all it is a stretch period. But it also is when it's putting on bud sites as well.
So you're saying I'm in flower now. I just flipped my lights to 12 on 12. The first 21 days, I'm still going to feed my veg formula. And
Yeah.
the reason being is because my plants are still needing the veg formula, because they're still growing leaf at this point. They're not really growing buds. They're growing a lot of stalk, stems, in leaf.
Yeah, exactly. And it's what was I gonna say? Within, usually in my garden, within 7 to 10 days, I'll have bud sites, and I'll know exactly where everything's, what it's doing, and where it's going to be at.
So,
but it's,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's just with the 2-part, it makes it so much easier on people, because you're not having to, okay, I'm on, let's see, 1, 2, okay, I'm on the 3rd week. I've got to cut this out. Now I've got to add this. With a lot of the different nutrients and stuff that's out there, it'll say, okay, you run it the first 3 weeks, and then you cut it out. Well, then you got to add this other product. You run this for 2 weeks, and then you cut it out, and then you put this for the end of it, which is overkill, I think, with the boom boosters and all that shit and everything, because 90% of your boom boosters and stuff like that is just K20. It's potash. So if you got the correct nutrients and everything, that's already in there, and that's like the crop salt stuff. Everything's in it. You don't have to add anything. Period at all.
Some people think, well, if I add more, it's going to get bigger.
No, that's not the case. Adding more, you can end up causing a problem and locking other nutrients out.
That's
to where it doesn't work, like it should.
You talk about lockout a lot, and I do want to finish up the system of going into flower. You also used a thing called cake you were mentioning, and that's a whole nother thing I want to get into, and I know we're running a little low on time, but I'm just curious, okay, so you're in the flower stage now. We're about 21 days in, roughly, and then you're switching over finally to your A and B formula of the crop.
Yeah.
And then once you switch over to A and B, how long are you into that before you switch over to this cake stuff that is like the flush part of it?
The cake is used for the last 14 days, and 14 days is what I do for flush. Always been a rule of thumb. Old school guys have taught me that. And all it is you use 3 grams of it. It's only 4% on the actual product itself. And it's let's see. I actually have it right here. It is 4% of soluble potash. It's K20 is what it is. So on the MPK for the numbers, it's a 004.
Interesting. So it doesn't have 0021,
No,
or something ridiculous. I've seen some that are like, what the freak, man? They're like at 21 or 28, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
I used to have a boom booster I don't know what but it was like 0.350.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Those crazy.
Yeah, Grow Tech, I think is what it was. Monster Bloom.
Yeah, and so.
But I mean, you can see this is just a powder, a white powder.
Yep.
Is all it is, and that's the cake.
Interesting.
You know, they're on IG. You know, and it's just crop salt. The guys who own it are actually growers. They run warehouses. You know, they've just come up with a superior product, and they stand behind it totally. I mean, they're always posting, hey, crop salt, we'll put it up side by side against anything and guarantee that crop salt will blow it out of the water.
Wow.
Because they're just, the product is, honestly, the product's that good. I mean, blowed me away the first time I run it. The first time I run it, I said, oh, yeah. And I didn't even have it dialed in. And now that I've got it dialed in, it's clockwork. It repeats every time. The strands come out, you know, the ones that I've run before with it, it's the exact same. It repeats every time. So you don't have nothing that changes in it.
Wow. So let me kind of get this from top to bottom. We go from A and B veg, then we go to A and B flour, and then we'll go into the last 14 days of cake. And a lot of people are used to 1 week of flush, 2 weeks of flush, but 3 weeks of flush. Holy shit! You know that kind of scares people because they're used to thinking week 6. When you're in week 6, you need to be feeding heavy.
Not necessarily, and it depends on the strand. In all honesty, like a lot of the stuff I run 67 days in flour.
So
you know, from the time I flip.
Days.
Yeah, you know, but if you're gonna run sativas, yeah, you're gonna have you got some of those that'll go 16 to 20 weeks on a sativa. You know, a true land race. You know, and some of the sativas that breeders have been putting out are still a 12-week strand. So it's just based off of what strands you run and how they finish. You know, if you know your strand, and that's why I say pay attention to the lineage. Look and see what the mother and the father is, and then you can get an idea of, okay, well, this one finishes in this one finishes, you know, this way, and then you put the two together, and you can get an idea of how many days in flour. But also, you pay attention to the plant. The plant's going to tell you everything when you're looking at it. Clear through your flour, your veg, everything. It's going to tell you what it needs and what it wants. And it's going to tell you if you're pushing it too hard.
So now, veg, A and B, flour, A and B, cake. And then the only thing aside from that you're using right now is really it's the algae, and it's called Grow with More, or it's more.
Yeah, and that takes care of all the algae, all your biofilms, the whole 9 yards. And then the plants thrive even more. I noticed with using it, bigger plants, bigger stalks, a lot cleaner root system by far. You know, it's like they say, happy wife, happy life. Happy roots, bigger fruits.
That's right, man. So tell me, how big are your stocks getting? You just said something.
Last run.
Holy shit! And how big
Stock.
are those plants?
Huh?
How tall are those plants?
5.5 foot tall.
And they're about a silver dollar in thickness on the stock.
A little bit bigger.
Holy shit!
Yeah, I mean, it'll actually, you know, you got that. I use a 1.5 by 1.5 rock wool when I clone or I start seeds. So by the time it's done in flower, you can't see the 1.5 by 1.5 anymore. It's done exploded. It's gone.
Damn. So were you noticing that before you used more?
I mean, yeah, I had decent sized stocks, but adding this more made a difference, made a bigger difference on stock size and everything.
Interesting. And usually the stock size kind of gives you an idea of what nutrients are being pulled up through the plant.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting, brother. Interesting. So we've got a lot of intel here, you know, where you're using HPS primarily. Now, any difference between, have you ever seen a CMH versus HPS? And I know we got to get going here soon, so I'm just trying to.
I mean, CMHs are good lights. I mean, they you know, they're pretty much almost identical, just a different bulb, different way the bulb's made. You know, it's a ceramic.
Oh, interesting.
I know a lot of guys that run them and have just as good success as they do with an HPS.
Got it. That's really important for the audience, and for even for me, because I'm experimenting with CMH right now, and I was a little nervous because I know HPS, and I know that that's going to always provide like fire, frosty, big, juicy nugs.
Yeah.
I was worried that CMH might not be the same, and so I'm glad to hear that. So
yeah,
go ahead. Good. So, well, let me ask you. I mean, how much time do we got here, brother? I know that you know you got to get going here soon.
I'll drive and I'll talk while I'm driving.
Oh,
Ain't no big. I can do that. I can kind of multitask. Is what I can do.
I love it. All right.
I gotta get. I don't really want to go, but I have to, so I can get this. I can get this new knee to where it's working correctly.
Oh man. Well, we don't want to keep it from that, but let's if we can keep talking. I got more questions. I mean, there's so much. Just for you guys as the community, I don't think you really understand who OGFAST is. I mean, and who he knows in the industry and what he has as far as strains and the original strains. So just to kind of give you some kind of idea, you know, there's a lot of people that talk about, and we've already went through a ton of like how you grow, what you grow with, right? But now let's talk a little bit about what you grow, you know, and why you grow it, and how do you know it's the originals of the kingdom of cannabis? You know what I mean? So you were telling me about your GG4, and I'm super interested because a lot of people claim that they got the original GG4s, but how do you know yours is GG4 and the originals?
Well, the gentleman that created GG4 goes by Josie Wales. Josie is an old school breeder. He had a partner too. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but I knew Josie from back from the forum days. Well, I had taken a break from growing to take my son to BMX race, and we traveled the country. So I really didn't have time for a garden then. And as he got a little bit older, he kind of wanted to get away from it. And I got back on the forums and told everybody, hey, what's going on, guys? How's everybody been? This and that. You know, I'm going to start growing again. Well, Josie was like, hey, man, I can't find your address and stuff. I said, Josie, you got my address, damn it. You know it. No, man, I can't find it. I send him my address. 4 days later, I have a single cut at my house, and I have no tents or anything. So I get a hold of him. I'm like, man, what are you doing? He's like, hey, he said, that's something I've been working on, and we're going to call it Gorilla Glue #4. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I run it. It turns out just retarded amazing. So I keep running it and everything. Well, then Josie what he ended up doing was he got licensed and the whole 9 yards. Well, he was starting to do S1 seeds of it and putting it out. And there was different bigger dispensaries and stuff like that actually got runs of seeds to put in their gardens. Well, there's a lot of them that think they have the original GG4, but they don't. The GG4 I have is unique, very, very unique. Terpene, the actual terpenes on it, the trichrome production, everything, the way the plant grows, the whole 9 yards. I've had so many people come to my house like, hey, I got Gorilla Glue. And I'm like, oh, you do, huh? All right, cool. They'll roll something up, and I can hit it one time. And I'm like, no, that's no. And I'll put it out. They're like, what are you doing? I said, just hold on a minute. And I'll grab a jar, grab some out, roll it up, light it, hand it to them. They'll hit it, and they'll go, God damn, what the hell is this? And I'm like, that's GG4. Wow. So me, and I think there's one other guy, there might be another one. There's one other guy I know for sure that has the exact same cut as I have. So it's one of them things that's special that really nobody got. And I think what it was more of a friend. It was a friend thing, but it's more than that. It was back when we were on the forums and all that. The community was totally different from what the community is now. It was, we did a bunch of trading. And, you know, back in the day before everybody got hip to sending rooted clones, we used to just take snips, you know, like you would do to take a clone. We take snips, wrap paper towel around the bottom of wet paper towel, stick them in a baggie, and throw them in a manila padded envelope and ship them. You know, that's how we used to do the cuts back in the day. You know, and now today you got clone cruisers and stuff like that. And everybody uses, everybody's went to the tackle boxes, which I think the tackle boxes are even better because you can put more in it, and then you can actually take the dividers and cut the centers of the dividers out.
Yeah.
Not all the way, but cut a section of it out to actually stick over top of the actual stem to actually hold the plant in place so it's not getting beat around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I use. I love the tackle box. I swear to God. It keeps everything nice and sealed in there. You don't keep bouncing around. It's just like it was made for it. Feels like it was like, man, fishing? No, this is a little bit different than fishing.
Yeah. we ain't fishing. We ain't fishing. Oh no, that's the one main strand that I'll never ever get rid of. It'll always be in my garden. You know, I've got other original stuff. I've got the original King Louis OG, which is an actual certified and verified original cut. Trying to think of what else I got. That, the Fire OG, the SFV OG.
You got the original SFV OG?
Yeah, it actually from the San Fernando Valley. It's actually from Josh D's circle, which if anybody that doesn't know, Josh D is the man who brought OGs to the market. He was the man who found it.
Yeah, what's the terpene profile on that? I'm just curious. Is it a pine OG, pine gas?
No, which one?
The SFV.
The SFV is really, really similar to the King Louis. The King Louis is a lemon pine stall. I mean, that's the best way to explain that. And then the SFV does have a slight piney to it, but it's not real dominant. And it has and it has the lemon in it as well. The original OG, it's a piney lemon gas.
That's the one I've ran into. That's one of the rarest ones I've ever ran into was the piney gas lemony kind of fragrance. You know that
Yeah,
just that old school
and that piney is just that's the earthy.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, what do you mean earthy? And it's just, it's hard to explain to people because you get a lot of stuff, you'll grow it and everything, and you'll hit it, and you're like, damn, what the hell's that taste? It ends up being having a floral taste to it, or an incensey, perfumey. There's all different types of terpenes and different profiles for different plants. Well, but I mean, I had the original cut of Maui Wowie that come from the islands in the 70s. I mean, I had the back in the early 90s. I had the original blueberry. Smelled like a blueberry muffin, tasted like a blueberry muffin. You smoke it.
Was that from DJ Short or?
Yep. Yeah, that's DJ Short's. I actually have a cut of a blueberry a gentleman sent me, and from everything that he's told me and then what I've seen from the plant, it might be that strand that I used to have back then, which would be the original B130 blueberry from DJ. So, and then I just
Hey guys, just hold on for a quick second, just in case his internet is messing with us. Oh man, I hope we don't get cut off. This is great conversation. Give it a quick second, guys. I'm hoping he comes back. And if for some reason he doesn't, holy mackerel, we're gonna have to stay tuned.